My name is Daniel, and I am an architect specializing in the restoration of historical buildings. I've worked on churches, colonial mansions, and even ancient cemeteries, but nothing compared to what I experienced at the Monastery of Santa. I arrived at the monastery was isolated atop a hill, surrounded by a dense, unlit forest. It had been closed for over 80 years, abandoned in haste. The reason? No one really knows. There are only stories passed down among the older locals, whispers about something amiss in that place. I was hired to assess the structure of the building before a possible restoration. My task was simple: spend an entire week inside, studying the conditions of the walls, ceilings, and foundations. I didn't believe in legends, so I accepted the job without hesitation. But from the very first night, I sensed that something was waiting for me. I arrived at the monastery in the late afternoon. The sky was gray, and the cold wind blew through the trees, causing the dry leaves to dance on the ground. The main entrance was partially sealed, so I had to go around and enter through a side door that creaked like a scream. The interior was dark and suffocating. The smell of mold and extinguished candles permeated the air. The long stone corridors were filled with shadows, and the silence was absolute, an oppressive silence, as if something there was listening to my every step. I prepared my flashlight and began the inspection. I passed through the main hall, the nuns' cells, and the old refectory. There were religious symbols everywhere, though many were worn away, as if someone had tried to erase them with their own hands. Then, I saw the first sign. At the end of the corridor, a slightly open door led me into the monastery's chapel. The altar was covered in dust, and the crucifix at its center looked crooked, almost displaced from its original position. But what made me shudder was the prayer bench. Someone had been there. The upholstery was indented, as if someone had knelt there not long ago, and next to it lay a broken rosary, its beads scattered across the floor. Then I felt a cold draft behind me. I instinctively turned, and that's when I saw her for the first time. At the back of the chapel, a dark silhouette stood out against the weak light streaming in from the broken window. It was a nun standing in front of one of the benches. Her black veil fluttered slightly as if touched by an unseen wind. She didn't move. She didn't make a sound. She just stood there, motionless. My heart pounded in my chest. The flashlight began to flicker, pulsing irregularly, and then at the moment the light completely went out, she vanished. The next day I sought out the caretaker of the monastery, a man named Ernesto. He had tended the ruins for years and knew all the macabre stories of the place. When I mentioned what I had seen, he turned pale. "You saw Sister Helena, didn't you?" The name echoed in my mind like a cursed whisper. According to Ernesto, Sister Helena had lived there in the late 1800s. She was known for her unwavering faith, until something happened. Some of the nuns began reporting that, in the early hours, she would speak alone in the chapel, her back turned to the altar. Others witnessed her shadow moving unnaturally, as if it were a separate entity from her. One day, Helena was found inside the chapel, kneeling before the altar. Her veil was soaked with tears, and her body, lifeless. The official cause was ruled a suicide. But what terrified the nuns even more was her face. Her eyes were black and sunken, her mouth twisted into a forced smile as if someone had held her in that position. Soon after Helena's death, strange occurrences began. Nighttime whispers, prayers uttered in unknown tongues, and figures gliding through the corridors. The remaining nuns fled, leaving the monastery behind. "They say she never left," Ernesto murmured. "She is still kneeling in that chapel, praying for something that will never set her free." In the following days, the phenomena intensified. Third night. The night was enveloped in an almost tangible silence when the footsteps began. I heard them faintly, like distant murmurs slowly drawing near. Each step echoed through the empty corridors, making the cold air vibrate around me. At first I thought it was merely my imagination, but soon I recognized a deliberate cadence, measured steps, marking a presence that did not belong to this world. With my heart pounding, I looked up from the shadows, and the door to my room slowly creaked open. Outside, in the unyielding darkness, the shadow of a nun emerged against the faint light seeping under the door. She stood there, motionless, as if scrutinizing my every move, her features blurred and unreal, blending into the night. The silence between us seemed to exact a price, and I felt that her mere presence carried an ancient weight, a silent warning of what was to come. Fourth night. On the fourth night, the terror escalated with soft, nearly imperceptible knocks coming from the wall of my room. As the rhythmic sound persisted, as if insisting on calling me, adrenaline took over. With trembling hands, I switched on the light, and what I saw froze my blood. On the aged wooden wall, clear and unsettling marks resembled fingers, or what? appeared to be fingers, stained with dried blood. Each line seemed to tell a tale of pain and despair, as if someone had left behind a silent cry for help, a plea forgotten by time. The light revealed not only the vivid color but also the irregular texture of the marks, resembling scratches made with superhuman force. I sensed that the room exuded echoes of a violent past, and those marks were a disturbing reminder that some secrets should never be unearthed. Fifth night, driven by an unease that wouldn't let me rest, I returned to the chapel on the fifth night. Upon entering, the atmosphere was thick and charged with an invisible energy, almost suffocating. The broken rosary, which had once lain abandoned as a remnant of the past, now moved slowly along the floor, as if guided by unseen hands. Its movements were gentle yet precise, tracing a silent path through the sacred space. As I approached the altar, my eyes locked onto the figure of Sister Helena. She was kneeling, as if immersed in a prayer that resonated in dry, scratchy tones, melody of despair and resignation. Every word that seemed to escape her lips was a whisper penetrating deep into the soul, and for a brief moment, time appeared to suspend itself in that macabre scene of devout tragedy. Her presence was both tragic and terrifying, as if the very spirit of the monastery had manifested in human form, pleading for redemption, or perhaps revenge. On the sixth night, the clock struck 3:33, and it was at that precise moment that the horror reached its peak. I was on the verge of sleep when I felt something approach. A cold whisper invaded my ear, laden with inaudible, ancient words. The sensation was as if death itself had leaned in to murmur long-forgotten secrets. In a mix of terror and fascination, I slowly opened my eyes, only to find Helena's face just centimeters away from mine. Her eyes, as black and deep as an endless abyss, seemed to drain all the light from the room, leaving behind a disquieting void. Her smile, distorted into an expression mixing pain and malice, defied any attempt at understanding. The silence that followed was so dense it could almost be touched. It was the sound of fear settling into the very core of one's being, a warning that some entities should never disturb the world of the living. That presence, both real and ethereal, left an indelible mark on me, one that I will never forget. The last day, on the seventh day, I decided I couldn't stay there another minute. I packed my things and left before sunset. But as I was leaving, Ernesto was waiting for me. "You forgot this," he said, handing me something. It was the broken rosary. I stared at him in horror. I never touched that. He only smiled in a strange way and said, "Then how did it appear in your room?" I didn't answer. I simply got in my car and drove away. But something still wouldn't let me be at peace. That night, as I lay down to sleep, the rosary was beside my bed, and for the first time, I heard Helena's prayer, inside my own home. Since that day, I feel as though she has never left me. Every midnight at 3:33, I hear knocks on the wall, and one night, while looking into the bathroom mirror, for a fraction of a second, I saw the reflection of a nun behind me, with a dark, empty smile. The last thing I heard before the lights went out was a cold whisper in my ear.
Pray with me.